thank you for joining us for today's webinar, How and When to Use Your New Financing Options with KMC Controls. My name is Jason Mills, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communication here at KMC Controls. And joining me today from Aero Intelligent Solutions are Nick Sanchez and Jim McWilliams. Nick Sanchez is a business development representative with Aero Operational Technology Alliances North America, and Jim McWilliams is field sales with Aero Capital Solutions. Please feel free to use the chat to add your questions, and Nick and Jim will try and address them at the end of the webinar. We'll do probably about 45 minutes of presentation and try and save the last 10 to 15 minutes for questions. With that, Nick, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off for you.
Yep. Thank you, Jason, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I'll be spending a little bit of time walking through the relationship with Aero and Aero Intelligent Solutions. Some of you may know Aero Electronics Incorporated, and some of you may know us in only one very particular way. So I will start my slides and just confirm that everybody is seeing that. And then are we good to go, Jim? Are you seeing the slides? I just want to make sure everybody's seeing the slides. Okay, great. So once again, Aero Electronics is a global supply chain and distribution company. We also offer a realm of services ranging from design and engineering services on the front end through implementation, deployment, and then as we'll be speaking about later today, services such as Aero Capital to do project financing. We are a global organization. You'll see that we have presence in 90 countries. We have 41 fulfillment and value-added integration facilities, and then 295 branch locations spread out across the globe. We've been partnered with KMC Controls around a couple of different initiatives for several years now, actually. And really what the team that I'm a part of, the Aero Intelligent Solutions Group, is focused on is the challenge between sharing data and implementing solutions that traverse the operational side of the business and the enterprise side of the business, or sometimes I like to call it as the carpeted side of the business, where the IT folks sit, and then the concrete or the non-carpeted side of the business, where it's in-field services, it's the manufacturing facility, it's the building automation realm, or the building management realm. The slide that I have up on the screen here today, some of you will recognize many of these technologies. It's really probably tilted a little bit more towards industrial. I would say if you are in the building and building automation space, you could easily slide out some of these honeycombs and replace them with like a BAS or a BMS system, looking at access control systems and similar. But really the point of this slide is to talk about how we manage the connected enterprise and helping to move data from the operational side of the building and into the enterprise side of the building to enable anything from predictive maintenance schedules to looking at automation and control, and really bringing the valuable data from the operational side of the enterprise into the business side of it for decision-making power. At Aero, we are one of the solution aggregators or solution orchestrators in the marketplace. In fact, we were the first global solutions aggregator with Intel. And so what does that mean to you is that, well, our team worked very specifically with a subset of partners and technology partners. The partner groups that we work with tend to be operational technology systems integrators. These are the folks that are working with the operational technology systems in a customer level. So there tend to be domain expertise in this realm, working with particular verticals and or particular end customer or building types. We also work with our technology partners that are focused on the intelligent edge. And the objective of working in this model is to help to enable a complex ecosystem of technology and of technology partners to work around success at an end customer level. So I think this is a slide that I'll spend a little bit of time with. I think it's really important as we talk to the audience today, and as we talk about how we work with our partners at KMC Controls and the technology partners behind that solution. It's important, a few things that I'll call out about this slide before I get into it. Number one is that I'm going to talk about the slide moving from right to left, so a little bit in reverse order. And it's really how we see an engagement and a project. The other thing I'll call out is that while I have boxes represented with labels inside of these, we don't want to put you in a box. This workflow is really helping us to understand who's involved and what capabilities rest in each of those areas, and then again helping to orchestrate around success for the end customer. So first thing I will point out is this call out button on the right hand side of my slide, which is that from an Arrow perspective, speaking from our lens, we do not want to own the end customer or the end client. We believe that relationship is held by the systems integrator or what we call the OT channel partner, and in some cases the OEM or the ISV, the independent software vendor. We do want to know who that customer is. It's important for us to understand their objectives or the business challenges that they're working to solve for. But ultimately, we want to respect the relationship that they have between the business partner that they're already working with. So as we move to the left, what we're looking for from an Arrow perspective is we understand that there's a set of business challenges or problem statements that are being worked on. Our job as a technology company is to help our partners to identify the right technology partners, partner delivered services, and really where the IP and oftentimes in the software realm exist to bring success or bring the ability to solve those customer challenges or problem statements. When we do that, there are some core capabilities that Arrow bring to the table around again, I mentioned at the outset, we are a global supply chain and logistics company. So we have a large number of technology partnerships. KMC Controls is one of our branded alliance partners. And so in terms of bringing those products through, helping to deal with integration, and in this case, when we talk about integration, I want to be specific that it's at the application level, and it's at the hardware bundling level. So in a large project, it may be advantageous across multiple geographic locations for installation to kit and bundle equipment to do advanced loading of software image and things along those lines for configurations so that the on-site time and requirement is reduced or minimized. We help to manage the life cycle and identify solutions. Obviously, KMC are a good example of this in terms of bringing forth not only technology to provide connectivity and controls, but also integrating that into a command and control platform in the Commander offer that KMC bring to market. I'll pause here if there are any questions or comments. I don't see any in the chat, so I'm going to flip back to my slides here and we'll continue on. I mentioned at the beginning, Arrow are a global supply chain and logistics company. So what presentation would be complete without an NASCAR slide? This is just a sampling of some of the technology partners that we work with. On the left are our large branded suppliers. On the right-hand side, you'll find some of the more pocketed or niche technologies that are specified to dealing with the edge or particular environments. Those environments can be condition-based, or they can also be vertical basis. So some of these folks are specialized in areas, for example, like retail. Others are going to be more tilted towards manufacturing and industrial applications. So how does Arrow work with our partner ecosystem? This is really when we talk about the operational technology partner alliances group, which is the group that I represent and cover in North America, along with a few colleagues that are geographically aligned. Really what we're looking to deal with is along the top half of this slide are what we report as our partner benefits. So being a part of our operational technology alliances group brings these things forward. We help our partners to connect with resources. These can be at the supplier level or at the developmental level. They can also be in terms of project management, large scale project rollouts and things along those lines. We offer discovery around ecosystem expansion, looking for new partners if you have, again, large projects where you may need to partner with other organizations to help deliver and or manage particular parts of that project for the end customer. We offer training and education and then technical support tiering as well. This would be through our professional services organization. We also offer co-creation of solutions and allowing, bringing engineering services in to help when a customer or a partner wants to brand something as their own and offer it as a managed service, for example, or as an MRR model. And then lastly is around scale. So we offer flexible business models, and we'll spend some time speaking about finance support or Aero Capital here a little later when I hand it off to Jim. What do we ask for in return from our partner ecosystem for these? One is that we ask for top level sponsorship inside the business to jointly develop and grow initiatives. We do ask for business development alignment as well. From a programming standpoint, we may set up agreements to facilitate the business model, going back to the organization or the opportunity mapping that I had up just a few moments ago. There may be a requirement for different types of agreement to be in place. I will also say that we have master services agreements and subcontractor agreements in place for our service delivery. So if those are services that your organization find of interest and want to leverage with Aero, the indemnification, the ability to the contract language is already in place for those things to be delivered directly with you to your customer. And then finally, we want to work around the opportunity with you, not in front of you. We want to work alongside you around those opportunities. So we describe it as joint pipeline development, joint opportunity development. We look at the ability to help you to access or increase your wallet share with your existing customers. So here in a moment, I'll hand this over to Jim McWilliams to talk a little bit about Aero Capital Solutions. Before I do that, one of the things I want to call out around this portion of the discussion is that one reason that we've partnered for this very specific motion with KMC is that we find that oftentimes these projects are complex in nature. There's a lot of vendors or suppliers involved in the background. And being able to unify that experience for the end customer, create an ease of billing and payment for the customer, offer different types of models ranging from OpEx, CapEx to outcome based, is meaningful from the end customer standpoint. There are some differentiators that Jim will touch on in terms of how Aero Capital operate as opposed to, for example, flooring companies that you may be familiar with if you have relationships with other distributors. And we'll be happy to answer your questions around this. The objective with the Aero Capital model is to provide whole project financing. And so the example I'll use that we've often used with KMC is that if the project requires new air handling units or new chillers to be installed, Aero don't sell any of that, but we're happy to finance and pull that into the project to make sure that the customer gets everything that they need in order for their project to be successful. And so with that, I'll pause, and Jim, I'll hand it over to you to talk about Aero Capital for a little bit here.
All right, thank you, Nick, and thank you, KMC and KMC Partners, for allowing Aero Capital Solutions to participate in your live production today. I am with Aero Capital Solutions. I reside in the Northeast, specifically in New York, and I cover all of the partners in the Eastern region of the United States. My background, just from a credibility standpoint, I always like to know who's speaking to me, either virtually or in person, is 30 years in the IT channel financing space. And that was with IBM and Verizon collectively. So let's begin. In terms of capital solutions, as you can see here very clearly, we participate, we finance, we lease products and services in the enterprise mid-market space, whether they be small or mega deal size. We really don't have a limit that is subject to the end user credit profile, as you may know. if you've sold financing as part of your total solution to your client. We also provide tax-exempt financing in the municipal public sector space, and that can be a differentiator. Not all lenders or lessors offer that. It's a low-rate financing to municipal customers in that sector, and we can do that vis-a-vis not having to pay federal income tax on the interest expense earned on that investment. We also participate in commercial, retail, point of sale, Internet of Things, energy lighting, tablets, PCs, laptops, etc., video signage, kiosks, and as well telecom, printers, mobility, medical, just about every industry and every deal size and every customer type. So I think that gives us a beyond general admission to participate in your opportunities, and hopefully we can make a marriage and do some business together. On this slide, what I really wanted to differentiate for the audience is how your customer is typically looking at an investment in the IT space, whether it be 100% soft costs, whether it be prepaid maintenance, software solution, subscription-based, or hardware for that matter. We're vendor agnostic, and we will provide financing for all OEMs. All OEMs are welcome, as I say. In terms of flexibility, I'll point you towards the OpEx slide or section of the slide. And we can do things in terms of payment deferrals that will give your customer flexibility on when they may want to start the billing for a particular investment. So, for example, if the installation or the acceptance of the software subscription was on August 1st, but they didn't have funds to begin paying that until 90 days later, we can accomplish that through a payment deferral. We offer terms from 1 to 5 years, 0% low rate financing options. And what I want to stress here is that it's almost an obligation of the solution provider today to have financing in their sales bag with their customer. Their customers are expecting it. I know that in the industry, $1.8 trillion is expected in IT spend in 2021. 1.2 of that is financed one way or another. So your customers have an expectation that you're bringing that as part of the total solution. So I would welcome an opportunity to participate with you in addressing that requirement. A point about the low rate financing is you don't necessarily need to get to 0%. We hear these promotions from time to time, but really what we need to target is a below cost of debt rate for your customer, depending on what their cost of debt is. And if we can get underneath that, it could be a win-win situation for all. We also order consumption-based models, sort of sip as you go from the hose. Monthly, quarterly, annual payments are available as well, depending on budget cycles. And that's from an operating expense standpoint, if your customer is looking to manage from their operating expense budget. If they prefer to have a CapEx where they have ownership of the assets, in many cases with software, the ownership rights refer to the manufacturer typically, but we would finance the right to use that software. And that's a full payout scenario typically where we're lending 100% of the entire soft cost. And that's a differentiator from an ACS perspective because many lenders are not comfortable with with non-collateralized financing. We're in that space. We know we need to be there to service our resellers and our solution providers. So we're happy to consider 100% financing for those deals. On the municipal side, again, a comment here on non-appropriations available to public sector clients. That simply means that we know it's an inherent business risk in the municipal public sector to be at risk for non-appropriation. It happens very, very, very infrequently, but it can happen. But we understand that risk, and we'll take that risk of doing business. So if you're selling in that space, non-appropriation clause would be used, which would basically say to your customer, we understand that you may not appropriate funds for this project, and we still want to enter into this transaction and provide this financing on your behalf. So they would not be on the hook, so to speak. If they were to non-appropriate, we would be taking that business risk. Buybacks, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but basically that is what's referred to as a sale leaseback. So if a customer has in-place assets, devices, laptops, iPads, what have you, and they have them in high number, they may not want to carry them on their books anymore. We have the capability, depending on the age of the assets and their condition, to actually provide value for those in-place assets to your customer, and either lease them back or find an opportunity to find a buyer for those assets to get them off of their books, so that they can go into maybe more of a managed infrastructure or even new equipment going forward. So we have the capability of doing that as well. We haven't seen a lot of that. I think that was more prevalent back in 5-10 years ago when we were doing tech refresh quite a bit. But we do have the capability. Outcome-based component here is really using structuring, financial structuring, to meet your customers' requirements, whether they be a return on investment, return on assets, just to name a couple. If we know what their targets are, we can financially structure transactions that are appealing to them and to their requirements. Nick, did you have something there?
Well, so I just wanted to maybe ask a couple of questions back to you, Jim, to help, I think, the audience see some of the different angles that we've observed in engagements around these types of projects. So here's one of them. We see these deals sometimes will have a mixed bag of consumption or financial models. So some things will be subscription based, or will already be in a monthly model, whereas others are CapEx. How does Arrow Capital work in terms of creating a single profile experience for the customer under one of those different models of OpEx or CapEx?
Well, it would begin with just an understanding of what the components of the sale are, how the customer wants to characterize them in terms of repayment of the obligation. Some of them may include some milestone payment requirements depending on the vendor and their requirements. We really have to take a broad view of each component and then try to mesh it into a unified solution from a financial standpoint with the end user client based on their requirements. And of course, the vendor requirements are going to weigh into that as well. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Yep. I guess the very simple version that I want to make sure everybody on the audience side understands is, again, a lot of this is around taking complexity out of the project for your customer. If the customer wants an OpEx model, Arrow Capital is a tool that you have in your bag with KMC that can help you to achieve that and take some of those, this stuff is all CapEx, you have to buy it up front, and help to convert it into more of an OpEx model. Another one for you, Jim. if you can talk a little bit about the differences between Aero Capital as a captive financing arm versus, say, like a flooring company, like a GE or a Wells Fargo that provides flooring financing for projects.
Yeah, well, the approach that we have, or the offer that we have, is more of a customer financing focus, as opposed to floor or inventory financing, which is really a different animal. That's not to say that we would not consider managed service financing if a reseller wanted to bundle, a set of components, hardware, software, maintenance, what have you, and bundle that to their client as a service. We could enter into a lease arrangement with the reseller if that was their desire to do so. That is an effective model in terms of the managed service offerings that we see today from our competitors. Preferably, we'd like to do it as a direct end user financing with the reseller's client. We realize that resellers, like any other company, are going to have a certain finite ceiling in terms of what they can carry from a financial or book perspective. So we can work in either capacity depending on what the needs of the customer and the vendor are. We try to really facilitate a hybrid that would work for both parties.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And you really kind of you knocked off one of my other questions that I was going to ask around the services and the managed services model. So I appreciate that you addressed that. One more, maybe, and then we can move into some examples here. I think it's important, again, as most of the folks in the audience today are systems integrators themselves. What does it look like for the vendors and suppliers inside of an Aero Capital funded project for them being compensated for their portion of the deal?
Great question, and really an integral part of IT financing in the channel, right? So we do have scenarios where a reseller would be able to participate really on a number of fronts. One, from a compensation standpoint, this business is driven by rates, right? Competitive rates. It's driven by fees that we'll call finder's fees or participation fees for bringing an opportunity, into a lender or a lessor like Aero Capital. And then usually a softer but tangible service in terms of ease of use. So rates, low rates win, right? Fees are sort of expected in this industry. And then ease of use in terms of process operations getting settled in a timely manner. So we believe we check off on all three of those. Of course, you're going to be the final arbiter in that, in terms of utilizing our services, and then you can come back and tell me or tell us whether what I had promised actually comes true. But I am here a short time, but I've seen pretty impressive things from an operational standpoint. In delivering on time and exceeding that. Our rates are going to be competitive, otherwise we wouldn't be in existence. And fees can be implemented into the transaction. We need to know early and often upfront if that's how you want to transact or structure the deal. We don't have a programmatic fee system where I would say to you, Nick, if you bring in, a $50,000 opportunity, we'll pay you X. It's not how Aero chooses to do it. We would have to have a dialogue up front on the customer opportunity, get them credit approved, and then talk about how you want to structure the pricing of that lease or finance transaction and what you would want in terms of a fee, a finder's fee, if that's what you're pointing towards.
Yeah, and so Jim, I'm going to highlight just a couple of things that you talked about there, by way of just kind of bringing them forward and hopefully making them stick out. So one, Arrow as the operator or as the manager of the program. So we will work in concert with you around that end customer to build the program, and then also to kind of deliver and then ultimately manage that. For example, if it is an OpEx model, and collecting the monthly or quarterly payments as they would be structured. Another thing I would bring out is that, and this isn't maybe a callback as much as it is something I'm remiss to have said when I introduced Arrow Capital. This is not a new motion for Arrow Electronics writ large. Arrow Capital has been a part of the business model for 15 plus years. So the group is well established and has been doing this quite a long time. I think it shows a little bit in the flexibility and in the various ways that they can manage things, but also in terms of being able to execute and be successful around a customer. I think that's important. Jim, if there's nothing else that you want to call forward, maybe we can slide ahead to the battle card that we've created.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
One moment. Thank you for the questions, by the way, Nick. Very good questions.
I do my best, Jim. I do my best.
Yes, well, they're appreciated. They help us. They help us emphasize, some of our strong points. We're not going to be everything to everyone. Everyone's money is green, but I try to highlight where I think, our strengths intersect with the system integrator strengths, and if we can bring those two together, I think we have a winning solution. So in terms of our financing battle card, we want to talk a little bit. We talked a little bit about what we can do, what our capabilities are, where we can play, where we think we're strong, and how we can align with your products and services. And, insulating margin is one of those topics that fall underneath there. It's a very competitive landscape. You would know best being in the trenches every day, but we see it as well. And we have to be competitive on our side of the fence if we're going to expect you guys to contribute and bring us into opportunities. In terms of positioning, this is really more of a listening exercise, but with a finance flavor to it. I mean, I always say to the folks that I'm working with, financing is a great way to, or even introducing a capital arm, a finance arm, is a great way to address the budgeting question, which is often a little bit of a skittish topic. But if you start to hear that budgets are constrained or the price is over budget, they would rather pay as they go. Anything of that nature should start to give you an inclination that they might be amenable to paying over time. And that's really where we roll up our sleeves and begin to structure something that would work for them. The tools in which we do that, are proposals. We have resources all across the country with Arrow Capital Solutions. And depending on where the reseller is located, we can provide some mapping to the SIs in terms of who their points of contact are. And Nick, maybe I can do that through you after the call to get that distributed. Because one of the first questions basically is, well, how do I engage? And that's our starting point. There is a software solutions package that's defined here in some broad strokes, but a very user-friendly two-pager, not preamble to War and Peace, very easily understood by the market participants, a very understandable, digestible language that's used. It has a certificate of acceptance, a certificate of incumbency, just to validate the customer and the transaction, and it gives them the authority to accept the solution, which essentially means to us, green light, customer's gotten what they've bargained for. We can go ahead and settle with the system integrator and commence billing on that transaction. So that's just more of the blocking and tackling. An example here that really demonstrates the power of having a finance partner is how you have a solution here illustrated for roughly $175,000, adding a support for 12 months. So your total solution is $218,000. The customer's budgeted for $175,000. So what do? There's only so many things you can do. You have margin at risk. You can start to tap into your margin, which is not something we want to do. In a purchase transaction or a true CapEx, we're finding that 50 to 55 days is the settlement of that account receivable, and that's also something we really don't want to wait for in terms of that length of time with accounts receivable being out there for that long. So introduce Arrow Capital Solutions. So in the bottom half of that slide, you can see what we've done there is we've enhanced the solution to include support for 3 years. You've basically doubled your revenue opportunity. So while your total solution is $446,000, you're using that annual budget of $175 and just taking that over the next 3 years. So we can structure annual payments, 3 annual payments that come in under annual budget that you can see it there, $165,000. And you can also use this structure not to tap into any of your margin. You've met their annual budget requirements, and your payment or accounts receivable days outstanding is much less than it would be on a CapEx purchase from the customer. We will settle with the vendor within 7 days of receiving the aforementioned documentation there, certificate of acceptance and incumbency. So it's just an example of having a finance capability versus not having a finance capability. And I think you're always stronger having one in your bag that you trust and can use on a regular basis with your customers. In terms of getting creative, we talked a little bit about deferrals, starting payment streams at some point forward from when the actual product or service is accepted. Most customers want to align their payments to their usage or their expenses to their revenue recognition. We suggest using financing as a sales tool. We can do some creative things with blind discounting rather than taking a 10% chunk of your margin to meet a certain price point on a CapEx basis. We can work things out mutually where you can buy the rate down with us. We'll take our rates down to the floor, and we can go in there, and it may be 5 points that you have to contribute to get to a win without really impacting any more of your margin. It's a very common practice used in the IT financing space, and it's very useful and effective. And we can talk more about that on a one-off basis as you run into those opportunities. Full solution financing, Nick kind of mentioned this earlier. We will finance all Arrow-based componentry, anything sourced from Arrow. We will finance anything outside of the Arrow catalog, and that's also a differentiator which ACS brings to the table. There are oftentimes supplemental componentry that Arrow may not carry, and we're happy to entertain that as part of the total solution. I'll take any questions that you may have.
Yeah, so please utilize the chat to post any questions. Jim, thanks for that. I'm going to maybe add just some observations that we're seeing that I think may be relevant to this audience. Over the last 12 to 15 months, we've seen a number of different finance programs rolled out from the federal government to different sectors, public sector, state and local, government and education, through CARES 1 and CARES 2. As I think everybody's pretty well aware, there's a large infrastructure bill making its way through to final version, that will also be making some investments. So I think relevant to what KMC are doing in the marketplace, things like indoor air quality, looking at environmental conditions inside of schools, inside of large public buildings or venues. These are funds that are coming available, and in many cases, the tools that Jim's been talking about, like first payment deferrals on guarantee of funding, being able to unify into a model that fits with the customer's need for consumption of that technology based on the funding award and the term of use, are all things that Aero Capital can really help to be creative in helping to solve for. We've seen what we would tend to think of as reverse logic of things that are available in an OpEx model needing to be converted back into a CapEx model because funding's available this year and this year only. And yes, we're happy with 3 years of service or support, but we need to pay for it all now. So we can also go in the reverse order of not bringing something into an OpEx model, but taking something that's already operational and moving it back into CapEx for that type of a consumption requirement. Jason, is there anything else that you wanted us to cover before we go to the closing here?
No, the only other question I think that we might want to answer is if there are any, and I was actually just going to type this up to you, if there are any restrictions for the size of the system integrator. So does Aero look for, any specific revenue or size for the system integrators?
Jim, do you want to take that, or you want me to start with it?
From an Aero Capital standpoint, the answer would be no. We're not looking really to approve anything for the reseller per se. I think that would be more specific to Aero in their business practice. We're going to be looking mostly towards the end user of the system integrator from a credit perspective.
And that's really what I wanted to highlight, is that our integrators, large and small, this is an amazing, very powerful tool that they get to add to their tool bag, regardless if they're a small, mid, or even a very large size integrator, which in my opinion this is a fantastic tool that all of our integrators can use. This is normally our time for questions. We'll stick around for about another minute and let everybody add any questions. If they have any, please don't be shy. If there are no questions, I don't think that we need to stick around for 20 minutes just waiting for somebody. So I know that we've got a great call to action here for everybody on the call right now. Go ahead, Nick. And
yeah. So Jason, first I'm gonna re-thank everybody for taking the time today. I'm gonna re-thank the KMC teams for their partnership, as well as for the opportunity to talk to you today. Really, what do we want to come from today? First and foremost, we want you to know that this is a tool that when you're partnered with KMC, you're partnered with Aero. And therefore, if you think that using some sort of a capital model can allow you to access a project that you may not have entertained before, maybe get something that you have been working on unstuck and moving forward, or just even use it as a tool to go and look at new customers that you haven't been in contact with previously, we want you to know that you have the tool bag to do that, and you'll have the support system to work with you in that. So what are we asking from you today? Look at what you've been working on. Again, if you have a deal that you think this might be a differentiator into it, we are offering as Aero and KMC to support you in joint 30-minute engagements with your customers to consult around whether or not an Aero Capital model would be something that they'd be interested in and would really help them to achieve the objectives that they've got set forward. The contacts down here at the bottom from a KMC perspective, Tim Vogel, and then myself at Aero. Again, what we would do, at least from an Aero perspective, and Jim alluded to this earlier, is based on where your project is, we will align you to a resource that serves that market or that geography from our standpoint, so that you get kind of a closer, more consultative engagement that's going to be attentive to the time and needs of that project itself.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not seeing any questions come in. I really hope that we have some people take advantage of this offering. I think that this is a win for everybody. This is a win for Aero. This is a win for KMC. This is a win for our integrators, and it's absolutely a win for the end users, because we can open up opportunities that maybe those doors were shut before because financing wasn't an option. So this is just, I feel like, a win for everybody involved, where we can make our integrators money, we can save the end users money, and we can facilitate getting more products sold. So guys, I really appreciate your time. Jim, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to thank everybody who's on the call with us right now today, and everybody who watches in the future when this is recorded. Thanks so much. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye now.